All right, we're gonna do this movie called Above Suspicion. Came out in 2019. Let's get it. So we got this chick by the name of Susan, right? She's gonna go cash some welfare checks or whatever, but then she sees a cop and then she dips out. So basically, she got these two kids at home and her ex-boyfriend or ex-husband named Cash. Then you got this other guy staying there by the name of BoJ with his girlfriend or whatever. They ain't been paying rent like they're supposed to, but they staying there out the strip for cash because, they met each other in jail or something like that. Now, she was able to cash one check, but the reason why she couldn't cash another one when she was looking at the cop was because one of the other checks was basically insurance fraud or some type of fraud. Now, Cash was trying to explain to her you could do those checks in Kentucky, but the thing was the other check was from West Virginia. So basically what they do, sell drugs. Now, the cop that's seeing her is some dude by the name of Randy. So basically while she's out, she's about to go try to cash this check again because she thinks the cop is gone, and she sees a dude by the name of Mike Putham. Mike Putham's got his wife and his daughter, just chilling, happy family. But we find out that Mike Putham's actually an FBI agent. We found out he's only been an FBI agent for like 2 weeks, so you think to yourself, what the heck is he doing down in Kentucky? Well, as it turns out, they're trying to find this bank robber. Turns out the bank robber they're looking for he's robbed like 5 or 6 banks, but only got away with $2,100. So you think to yourself, hey, it's a poor town or something. I mean, 21,000, my bad. His investigation led him to this town, so there you go. So we see Randy sitting at this one point, right, and he sees this car or truck pull up. He sees he's about to put a mask on and got a shotgun, but Randy beats it to it, and then the guy dips out. Because he was about to do a bank robbery right in the street, right across from him. So then Randy ends up telling Mark about the situation and thinking to himself, okay, we finally got our guy, supposedly. He had this red pickup truck with no license plate on it. So they basically starting to work together to try to find the location of this truck. Turns out the person that was going to rob the bank was actually Joe Bay. They tried to track him down, but then he got away. So the case goes quiet for a little while until a situation happens. So it was a good drug deal going down with like Susan, Cash, a bunch of other people, right? And now she's got a brother there, a brother by the name of Bones. Now Bones wants some money. The other dude that lost money started some beef, and then, Bones ends up popping this nigga. Because the dude started fighting him after losing money. So I'm not sure if the guy died or not, but he was badly injured. So Mark and Randy end up figuring out who the guy was, what kind of circle he runs in, and they basically end up staking out a Cash in Susan's house. They didn't really get nothing until they dug around the house and found like 1,000 things of Percocets. I'm like... Now the thing is, after all this, they go to like this coffee spot so they can set up a meeting. It's Randy and Mark going to talk to Cash and Susan. Now Mark's not worried about, Cash is not worried about shit, but Susan kind of is. So Mark has slid away to make a phone call. Then they say it's a phone call for Susan, so Susan takes the phone call by herself, and then she finds out that Mark knows about the welfare checks from West Virginia. So we're like, oh shit. With that extra added information, they switch up the deal. So basically, Bones is not going to get a whole lot of time. Cash is not going to get any time. But the thing that Cash doesn't know, Susan's got to become an FBI informant. Now he's basically using her to go to certain spots or whatever like that, and he's giving her like certain types of money. And that's why she's actually even willing to do it. But even at first, she's not really giving him a whole lot of nothing. Well, she did find a duffel bag full of shotguns that Joe Bay was hanging on to at the house. And some ski masks in there too. But the thing is, because Mark wants to be sure, they have to actually catch him in the act. So we see Joe Bay doing what he do. He about to rob another bank, dip out. But apparently they don't know exactly where he went because obviously he's not going to go back to the same house with it shit. So they find out certain information that he's actually at his mom's house with his girl. Police go in and get Joe Bay, done deal, he's locked up. So it gets to the point where Susan's actually feeling Mark for real. And Mark decides to give in, and he ends up giving her the business. And this happens for a while, meeting up at secret locations and whatnot. She smashed Cash at one point in time too, just to keep him off a trail. Now she's also got the sister that works at the beauty salon, right? You can tell she's kind of picking up on it, but not really. She basically just tells Susan to be careful. So then all of a sudden this guy by the name of Denver comes in there to talk to Randy and Mark. And he gives them this high profile case about a guy named Rufus. Now Rufus, he's like shipping and moving dope from all over the place. But the thing they don't know just yet, he's actually stationed down here in Kentucky too. So at this point, Mark has been kind of ignoring Susan because of this high profile case or whatever. And at this point, Susan basically fell in love with Mark. But it was at a point where they came to one of their rendezvous or whatever like that. But then the thing is, when she was going back to the house, one of Cash's dudes by the name of Bumpy told them that they seen her coming out of a motel or whatever like that. So they're like, the fuck is the deal? Susan told Cash she was trying to finesse somebody out of money, but Cash wasn't trying to hear that shit, just locked her out the house. So it gets to a point where she basically don't have nowhere to go right now, so she ends up going back over to Mark's house. So now you're thinking to yourself, why would his wife Kathy be okay with this? Okay. She wanted to have a sit-down conversation with Kathy one day in a cafe or whatever. Outside of parameters, of course, obviously. And when they talk, you think to yourself, Kathy seemed like this nice, wholesome girl, whatever like that. Then she explains her past. See, before Kathy met Mark, like she was doing all types of crazy stuff. I mean, she was selling herself out to guys and things of that nature or whatever, right? And that's what she met Mark and turned her whole life around or whatever like that. But then I'm thinking to myself, I know Kathy knows Susan is an FBI informant or whatever like that. But is she thinking to herself what Mark could be doing with Susan? So Kathy basically wants to have a second baby with Mark or whatever like that. Turns out she actually is about to have one. You can tell Susan feeling some type of way, but you think to yourself like, that's his wife. Of course he wants it. Like, the fuck out of here. All right, so back in present time. Mark has been basically ignoring Susan because of the case or whatever. But now all of a sudden he wants to feel like he wants to do right by Kathy and his child or whatever. So this is where we get to a situation where Susan actually knows who Rufus is. And she basically just gives him the heads up on Mark. So about a couple weeks later, when Mark actually finds the spot, he didn't find nothing. You know what I'm saying? He just found like an empty area or whatever like that. All of a sudden, you see Rufus and you see Denver right next to him. I'm like, wait a minute, what the heck is Denver doing next to Rufus? He's the one that gave him the information about Rufus the whole time. Like, the fuck? He was just playing his part, but it didn't seem like it in the conversation that they had. It was just like, what? So afterwards, Rufus and Denver go about their business, and then Mark goes to meet up with Susan again. Now, the thing was, before Mark found the location, he ended up giving Susan like $6,000 or something like that, but it was like, this is the last time I'm dealing with it, whatever. And that's how he knew the legit location of where Rufus was doing his stuff. But at that point, Susan had already told Rufus about the FBI. So Susan gets this bright idea after the meeting. She gets in a car and sees this Mustang for sale, and ends up buying the Mustang. Now, let me ask y'all this. She was going back to the house to pick up her kids while Cash was in there. Now, why the fuck would she not think he would get suspicious to figure out where this extra money come from to buy a goddamn Mustang? So that's when she really tells him that she finessed the guy at the hotel or whatever like that. So what does Cash do with this information? He gets the kids back in the house and ends up beating the brakes off of Susan. Which is never okay to do, but the thing is, he thinks she's on some bullshit. She ends up getting taken to the hospital, and who's there when she wakes up? Mark. Alright, so I didn't tell you about this one scene. It was a scene where when Mark had to take her in because Cash had kicked her out, he ends up waking up Mark while both him and Kathy are asleep, brings him downstairs and starts giving him the business while his wife is upstairs asleep. Dude, you gotta have some type of balls on you to... What? My bad, back to current events. So basically, Mark is in his house or whatever like that, and he heard noises and glass breaking downstairs. He finds these two guys in ski masks, you know what I'm saying? They're about to throw a Molotov Navi at the house and try to set it on fire. Mark shoots at it, they end up burning each other up and try to get back in the car while they're on fire. It's crazy. So now Mark's thinking to himself, there had to have been some of Rufus's guys. And he thinks that Susan told Rufus, which we know she did. So now it gets to the point of the trial of BoJay. And Susan had to come in there and start snitching and whatnot. Everybody was there. BoJay's girlfriend, Cash, his sister, and they all see it for herself, seeing Susan snitching. Now, of course, nobody saw her or anything like that when they was going in, so when they finally see her face to face in the testimony room, BoJay's looking like, what the fuck? As is everybody else. Now, I know she's been beat up and memory jogged and stuff like that, but the funny thing was, they had this one scene where she's supposed to put her right hand on Bible, she ends up putting her left hand on there. I'm like, really? And then she tells everything. Now, the thing is, obviously, she got to be in witness protection. You know, they got a safe house for her, whatever like that. It's only like 41 miles away from where she's at. I'm like, damn, it's not very far. Then it obviously got to a point where Susan felt like Mark had no more use for her anymore. So we found out before the trial, Mark is paired up with a dude by the name of Bob Costas. His name's going to come up later. So what does Susan do after she feels betrayed? Well, she found out that Mark's going to be moving to a different department. So she ends up telling Kathy how much they've been smashing, but Kathy pretty much had a feeling about that. But she feels like she's trying to hold the family together, so she basically don't give a fuck. Then the crazy thing after that, Susan ended up going back into the town. Like BoJay's girl wasn't gonna beat the shit out of her, and that's exactly what she did. She beat the brakes off her ass. And everybody in the town just gonna let it happen, because I mean, like, she's out there being a snitch, so there you go. They ain't tolerating that shit. So instead of going to the hospital this time, she ends up talking to the dude Bob Costas. Because he's not your typical police officer. So she gets the idea from him about calling Mark to tell her that she's pregnant. Just to make sure he'll come back to see her. Mark ends up coming back to Susan to make sure he's good. Now, let me think about this. As the audience watching this, you're thinking to yourself, ain't no way she's fucking pregnant. Especially that ass whooping that she got where J-Bo's ex-girl was giving her the business. She was beating the brakes off her, stomping her stomach or whatever like that. Ain't no way you thinking she's pregnant. And on top of that, she been sniffing dope and everything else on the side too. It's like, yeah. Well, it gets to a point where even Mark is even skeptical about this shit. To this point where Mark's thinking to himself like, oh, what are we gonna do? And then he actually has her considering like an abortion or whatever like that. So, you know, she feels some type of way like, the fuck? Now, he took her to this place to get something to eat before all this took place. Now, at the beginning of the movie, Susan's actually narrating everything like she's already dead. Now, you're thinking to yourself, with everything that's gone down, what could have possibly killed her? Could it have been suicide, homicide, because somebody in the town had done it to her? Because of the snitching, it could be a number of people within her camp, but it turns out it was actually Mark that killed her. I'm like, what? So this is how it happened, right? They were driving in the car. Susan was feeling some type of way. She got to swerve, Mark swerving all off the road or whatever like that. They end up running to the trees. While they're there, they get into an argument. And she knows Mark is never going to leave Kathy. Susan's life to turn to shit because she done snitched people out there, you know what I'm saying? She really ain't got no money left because most of it she used up on heroin. And she pretty much starts fighting Mark within the car. Mark's trying to hold her off, whatever like that, and he starts choking her. Now, his version of the story, he was just like damn near suffocating or whatever like that to make sure she just dies all out, but he wasn't even realizing it. But the real version of the story was, yeah, he was suffocating her, but he was punching her in the ribs, just beating shit out of her. And then as she was doing that, her head hit the dashboard or whatever like that, and then she got done deal. So apparently after all this, he's been living with this guilt for about, a couple more months. And this is when he tells his wife, Kathy, about something. He basically tells her that Susan was pregnant and that he killed her. So before this point, Kathy was sober for like a long time. This is when she first took a big ass drink. And Mark at this point is considering turning himself in. Now, Kathy didn't want him to do it, but he couldn't be talked out of it. So when they get to the point where they find the body of Susan, this was apparently like 10 months later, which all they found was skull and bones. Now you're thinking to yourself, who's taking care of the kids? Because Cash is not really fit to be taking care of kids. Well, it turns out Susan's sister was helping him out with it. So apparently this was a true story. So you think to yourself, what happened to all the characters? Well, it turns out J-Bo died in prison. Mike was sentenced to 20 years, but he ended up getting like 14. But right when he was about to get out of jail, he found out his wife passed away from drinking. I think the kids grew up doing the same thing that Cash does. Susan's sister still got the hair salon. Bones is doing whatever the heck he's doing. He really wasn't doing much anyway, you know what I'm saying? Rufus ended up getting away. He retired to Mexico. And that's pretty much it. Now I get the situation where Susan had to be in a position to be an informant, but you were kind of doing some unnecessary shit to get yourself jammed up. Above Suspicion on Netflix. Check it out.